Chapter 5.1 Endorsing and Writing Checks. In accounting, money is usually referred to as cash. However, most businesses make major purchases using checks. When people pay businesses, they'll pay with a check. When you get that, you will ultimately be depositing that. So we'll always want to deposit our cash. Well, one of the ways we deposit our cash is actually with a deposit slip. You can see here's an example of a deposit slip. It has the check, it has the amount, and it has the total. This is what you will use for your records when you are depositing cash. Once you deposit cash, there's three different ways in which you can actually endorse a check. The first one is a blank endorsement, probably the riskiest one because it basically turns that check into cash. And that's basically you just writing your name on the back. The next one is actually a special endorsement. This is going to be where you're going to try to transfer a check. So if I write you a check and you want to transfer it to your friend Tim, you would write on the back of the check, pay to the order of, and then Tim's name, and then you would sign it under that. And that's what's called a special endorsement. Finally, the last one, probably the safest type of endorsement, is a restrictive endorsement. And that's where you're going to write on the top of it, for deposit only to the account of, and you can either put the account number or you can put your business name. In this case, we put the business name Accounting Tutors, and then you would sign it. That's the safest one because the only way that thing can be deposited is if that goes directly into your account. Otherwise, it's not going to be accepted. So now, once we've worked on depositing, now we need to look on, okay, we've deposited money, now what happens when we write a check? Well, we're going to take a look at this example here. We are accounting tutors. We need to write a check. So we're going to kind of go through the steps on how to write a check. First thing I want to do is we want to record the balance brought forward on check stub 390. If you notice, that is a $4,675.47. So under the balance brought forward on the left-hand side on the check stub, we're going to write that number. We always prepare the check stub before we prepare the actual check. So in other words, prepare the left side before the right side. Next, you'll notice it'll say recorded deposit of $24.64.50 made on September 30th of the current year on check stub 390. We're working on check stub 390. You look underneath the balance brought forward, you'll see that the place to put amount deposited, and we'll actually just put that number right there with the date. Well, we had a balance and we had a deposit. That means we're going to add. So we'll add them all together and we get $71.39.97. Now we're in a situation where, in our subtotal, now had we had any other fees or outstanding checks, whatever, we would put those in the other, and that comes later in this chapter. But since we don't for this example, we're just going to go straight to the subtotal, which is a $71.39.97. And now our next transaction, they're asking us to write check number 390 to Williamson Street Supplies for $867. So starting on the left side, notice we are not actually touching the check yet. We need to make sure that we do everything correctly on the left side before we can go over to the right side. So in the top, we're going to put how much the check is worth. Well, we're going to write a check for $867. The date is actually November 30th. We're going to be writing this to Williamson Street Supplies. We're writing it for supplies. And now we're going to go down and we're going to make sure we have our next balance. So if you notice, we have our subtotal. Right underneath that on the left-hand side, you'll see amount this check. We're going to put $867. We have our subtotal minus the amount of this check because a check is ultimately taking money out of our checking account. And we get our balance carried forward, $6272.97. So now what we're going to do is we're going to prepare a check. Pretty simple. We're going to write the date. We're going to pay to the order of Williamson Street Supplies. We're going to put the amount, which is $867, and then we're going to write out $867 and no 100s. Now it's important that you know why you write it out, because if the number is not legible, a bank may only pay the amount that is handwritten out. So important to know there. We're going to write down in the memo what it's for, supplies, and we're going to sign our name. And that's pretty much how you write a check. Now, let's say we continue on, and we want to take a look at check number 391 to Spring Park Tribune. But before we can do that, what we have to do is we have to bring forward our balance. So if you remember in our previous check that we just wrote on 390, our balance carried forward was $6272.97. We want to take that and we want to put that in the balance brought forward on the next check stub. We don't have any deposits for this example. We don't have any fees or outstanding or NSF checks, so we really don't have to worry about that too much. However, we're not going to have that for this example, but we will later. So let's write the check. So our subtotal is $62.72.97. We're ready for our check. What's the amount of the check? The amount of the check for this one is $114. We're writing it on November 30th. It's to Spring Park Tribune. This is for advertising. So if our subtotal is $62.72.97, we're writing a check. We're deducting $114 from our account. So therefore, it leaves us with a balance carried forward of $61.58.97. So we write the check now. And once again, we don't start writing the check until the check stub is complete. November 30th, 2012, paid to the order of Spring Park Tribune, $114. Spell out 114 and no 100ths. What is it for? It's for advertising. And we write our signature. And that's how you write checks to and from the bank. So if we were writing check number 392, our balance brought forward would be $61.58.97, or in other words, the balance carried forward on the previous check.